Hey, you're back. Welcome to season 2 of The People We Meet. My name is Ty Brunner, and I'll be your host. This is a show about ordinary people that have done extraordinary things. I'm glad you're here, and let's get on with it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The People We Meet. Today, on the show, I have Jen Knudsen, and she is a trauma therapist with a master's degree in social work and has a very interesting personal and professional story. And I was excited to have her on the show today. So, Jen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ty. I'm excited to be here.
So I start pretty much all of these out the same way.
Mhm.
Where were you born?
I was born actually not far from here, in the Colbert area. So born in Spokane, grew up in Colbert, same house my whole life, Meade School District. So I'm a Spokane lifer.
Okay. So you grew up in Spokane.
Yeah.
What kind of kid were you? And what did home feel like?
So I was a very interesting kid. How do I describe it? I had a love for the biggest thing was I loved insects. I loved the outdoors. My family jokes because I don't know if you know those tomato hornworms that sometimes get on tomato plants, but I would have segmented pieces in terrariums, and they were my pets that people would normally get rid of. Empathetic. I did not like it when anybody stepped on bugs. My little sister, when she was young, used to tease me by, beating up my stuffed animals and enjoyed teasing me as a sister. So I was really empathetic. I felt like as a kid, I just felt a lot and had a lot of really kind of deep fears as a child, very kind of spiritually connected in a way that I didn't really understand.
What were you afraid of?
A lot of existential type things. I thought a lot about dying, thought a lot about worry with family members dying. I have been diagnosed with a little bit of OCD, which kind of tracing back at night, I would have to repeat prayers and thoughts with my family, or else I felt if I missed somebody, then they might die the next day. So I was a really anxious little kid.
How old were you when this was happening?
It started pretty early. My very first real phobia was there's a train that goes through kind of the Meade Colbert area here in the area, and when I was little, I'd hear the train horn at night, and I just saw the train coming through the window. It was just coming at me, and no matter how much my mom or my parents would try to comfort me, I couldn't get it out of my head. That created a lot of stress for my mom, who is also trying to take care of my newborn sister.
You said you had a older sister, right?
I have 2 older half-sisters.
Which was the one that beat up on your stuffed animal?
That is my younger sister.
Young sister.
Yes. So she's 2 years younger than me. So we grew up primarily together. My other sisters are older and from my dad's previous marriage. So we saw them every once in a while. But my little sister and I were pretty close.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Getting back to the thing about the trains, I'm sorry, and again, how old were you when that was happening?
I think around 4 or 5, potentially.
So pretty. Do you feel like that was that a nature thing or a nurture thing? Like, was that some product of your environment, or was that just something that was inherently part of you?
I think I had a huge imagination. I think that played a role of I had trouble honing in realities. I think it was also kind of a nurture thing with, my mom, was taking care of my little sister, and, after there's only 2-year difference between us. And so, it's difficult, I think, when you have 2 kids that close together to not be sleeping all night because of a newborn, and then, having to wake up because your 5-year-old is scared of trains, So, but yeah, I mean, I had a really vivid imagination, which led to me putting on all kinds of plays and and just different things. So growing up, I was very creative
Okay, that's
kid.
what I was going to ask you, because like imagination and creativity can be used for good, and they can be used for
Absolutely.
evil.
Yes.
So, did you write?
I did write for a period of time. Yeah. Early teens,
Oh.
early 20s. But then just kind of stopped doing that. Yeah.
So as you were growing up, and like this fascinates me, but I'm always interested to know, like, what kind of crowd did you run with, and what where did you fit in at school, and how did you do, and what were you interested in?
Yeah.
What music did you listen to, and what shows did you?
When I was real young, a lot of my activities were just like I'd have the neighbor kids over and I would organize these big plays or dance things, and I would make elaborate set designs. And so that was like my early elementary years. That was the thing I liked to do. I was a very shy kid when it came to being in school. I felt out of place a lot. About that time in elementary school, my youngest sister was one of the first kids that was diagnosed with Lyme's disease in Spokane.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had a lot of physical struggles that turned into like some educational issues. And so they actually tested me for it. And I had a spinal tap that ended up not going well. And so I couldn't walk for a few days.
Yeah.
Ended up becoming, inconclusive if I ever had it. But my sister had the bite and everything. So again, a lot of taking care of my sister. As I grew, I had a really amazing teacher my 5th and 6th grade year who really challenged me. Kind of the first time I ever really felt like that I belonged, that I was smart, that, he'll always have a really special place in my heart.
It sounded like you had friends, though. I mean, like all the, the plays and all the stuff that you set up. I mean, people came and watched it, right?
Well, I forced my mom and dad to watch it.
Yeah.
And I think people would want to somewhat do it. My sister got dragged into it a lot. I was kind of a bossy kid when it came to that stuff.
Mm.
So some people didn't have the choice. Just did it. Yeah.
So there's shy kids that go running home and don't make any friends, and then there's shy kids that put themselves out there and make friends anyway. Which one were you?
Like at school, it was really hard for me. I struggled to reach out in that kind of environment. But when it was a little bit more one-on-one and we had a lot of similar interests, that was easier for me.
So you don't like the crowd. You didn't like the crowds.
No, I still do. I'm not a fan of crowds.
I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah. Not always the most fun thing in the world.
So looking back now as a trauma therapist,
Mm-hmm.
do you see anything in your early life that shaped the work that you eventually chose?
Yeah, I did have a lot of, I'm using quotation marks with this, trauma experiences as a little girl. One being, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon, is my family home was hit by lightning 3 times in 4 years, I believe it was. And one of the times actually blew out all of our television sets. My dad liked to rig things around the house. And so I think that they kind of had some electrical stuff so that was a really scary experience.
I can imagine.
Being a young child, I had a mom who tended to be a little bit more anxious. So reading from her, that was sometimes hard. I had, the various car accidents, things like that. I was the type of kid where if my parents got pulled over for any infraction when I was younger, I would just cry and sob like it was the end of the world. So I was really sensitive. There was a lot of things that maybe, the average person wouldn't have thought was traumatic, but definitely had that effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things in my teen years that I think probably also helped with that. I also had a really good therapist that kind of inspired me to do this type of work.
When you were a teenager?
Yeah, I started going to see her. When you asked earlier about like kind of what kind of kid I was the type of kid that could be friends with just about everybody, kind of, hang out, but I didn't talk much. People just knew who Jen was. I actually took a lot of pride in that, but it was also pretty lonely to not really have any close people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I felt very awkward, didn't really know how to have those relationships.
So did you have did you have a best friend, or was there somebody that kind of?
Not so my own last best friend was in 4th grade.
Mhm.
Her name's Andrea, and we've kept in touch over the years. But kind of in that hard time in junior high and high school, I was kind of the tomboy type that had a lot of guy friends.
Mhm.
I felt more comfortable hanging out with guys because I was more of kind of the tomboy type.
Mhm.
So I did have some, and I've kept some people that I would say are really good acquaintances, but I didn't have a best friend, which sometimes I look back on and, it's hard. You know, people have high school best friends, and so I
Well,
didn't have
some,
that.
you know what? Some they show up sooner, and some they show up later.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, now your younger son,
Mhm.
he started showing signs of Tourette's,
He did. Yes. Yes.
and so what was the progression like from first symptoms to realizing the severity of it? And how old was he when he?
So I started noticing around 3 or so. The thing is that my husband does have Tourette's as well. He has a little bit of a traumatic background from that. Well, I wouldn't say a little, pretty traumatic background. And I really just became fascinated with it. I learned a lot about it. And so I had looked into, statistics of having children. It is much more prevalent if you have a son. The risks are higher for it to be passed down than girls. And so when I knew I had a son, I knew that would probably be more of a likelihood, but was still ready to take it on and learn more.
And I kind of skipped ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
So you were married, and then how long had you been married before you had your second son?
We were married in 2012, and our youngest was born in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. So a few years.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 I was looking for them though, like looking for the signs, and just started noticing like blinking behavior, twitching behavior and things like that.
And what are the signs that how do you know your husband has?
So my son or my husband, he has a lot of the coughing and sniffing
Mhm.
that comes with. Tic disorder is with just movement, right?
Mhm.
So people who have twitching or anything like that. To have a diagnosis of Tourette's, you have the body twitches and then also some sort of vocal tic, and that can be sniffing, coughing, clearing your throat. So he did a lot of that. There was like some squeaking,
Mhm.
a lot of like tapping, ritualistic behavior. So he has to like tap things like 5 times.
It seems like it's interesting because the symptoms manifest themselves in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I went to college with a guy who had Tourette's, and I didn't know it at the time. I'm like, we'd be talking, and he kept
Yeah. Yeah.
doing these like weird blinks at me, and I was like, I thought he was messing with me.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Why are you doing that, man?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got Tourette's. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
don't I feel? So,
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple. One of those other ones is like sticking his tongue on his nose. And there's been many times before when people are, just thinking he's making faces
Mhm.
but he has worked really hard to keep it under control.
Mhm.
But with Tourette's, there's several things: weather, stress, and viruses
Mhm.
tend to flare them up.
Okay.
And so just the other day, one of his tics was we were driving and he was having trouble not tapping the accelerator a couple times before he could push it. So we were, and we giggle about it and we laugh about it now.
Just don't do it at red light.
Yeah. It's something that takes a little bit of time and then really difficult for them. It's painful to watch as a wife and a mom. That.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if he's struggling with it.
Mhm.
Okay, so what did you start noticing with your son?
So it was just some of the like the blinking, the movements, some facial contortions a little bit, and then it started to get into more like flailing behavior, a lot of like neck, flinging his neck back.
Mhm.
It just progressed, and then actually last year, fingers crossed that a lot of this was because of medication, but he developed a a rare form of Tourette's, which is the coprolalia. It's the one you kind of see.
Say that again.
Coprolalia, I believe that's how you say it. Coprolalia or something like that. It's the one that they talk about in movies, or you see in movies where, cussing and throwing things or hitting things. And, even with my husband and my son with Tourette's, there was still that part of me that's like, is this like a real thing? And as I started watching it happen to my child, it was one of the most difficult things to watch. And it is very real. Caused some problems in school for a little bit there for him.
Well, so what's been the hardest part for you as a parent watching him deal with the more severe form?
My little guy is a kind, compassionate, empathetic person. We recently, one thing that people sometimes don't understand about Tourette's and those like vocal outbursts is what actually makes them come out is how inappropriate they would be in the moment. So it would be like, what is the worst thing you could say at this moment? And it's almost like your brain is like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. And then it comes out. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to.
No, I'd love to teach people about it because it's often misunderstood. I think recently, like at the BAFTA Awards, there was that whole incident with the individual, saying the N-word. And it was a situation where he was on TV. There were 2 African-American, actors on stage. And so what would have been the worst thing you could have done in that moment?
Yeah.
And with Tourette's, it's almost like
my gosh, that's got to be terrifying for the.
It is.
For the person with Tourette's to to no, I mean, it's almost like it's coming.
Yes, the way that they describe it is like holding in sneezes.
Oh my gosh,
and it gets worse and worse. You get really uncomfortable in your skin, and then once you do the movement or say the thing, then it kind of decreases.
Well, yeah, and then you said weather, anxiety, and viruses, right?
Yeah.
It's like, as you're sitting there thinking, what's the worst possible thing that's going to come out of my mouth right now?
Yeah.
And you start fighting not to say it. I can't imagine that anxiety doesn't build and contribute to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The anxiety
that's awful.
Is terrible. My little guy, unfortunately, this weekend, actually, we went out to a restaurant and he's almost 11, doing pretty good, but he blurted out the F word, F-U, to the waiter and then immediately started crying.
How'd the waiter react?
I don't think that they heard, but I made sure and just said, hey, and she's like, oh, it's fine. I didn't even notice. But my son's just devastation at.
How old is he right now?
He's almost 11.
Okay.
In July. Yeah. So I think that would be one of the hardest parts is seeing him do these things that is not in his character and he doesn't want to hurt people. He loves people. And so it breaks his heart.
Yeah.
And that's awful as a parent to watch.
So you mentioned that there's very little support locally. What does that actually look like day to day? And what do you think are the biggest gaps?
So here's a funny example. There's the Tourette Association of America. And when I first started to reach out, I really, wanted to kind of become an advocate or at least learn more about it. And when I reached out to find some maybe local help, they actually said, oh, congrats, you're in Spokane. You're now the representative for the Spokane area.
Oh, hey, hooray.
Is there any training involved with this or, which I didn't end up doing because I wasn't in a place to do that. But I've actually talked to a local professor where I learned about some tics just from my own. I searched for a good few years to find some therapy for my son. And there's just not a lot of understanding about it. Doctors, there's some neurologists that do understand it, but not a lot of doctors. Schools don't have a whole lot of training on that behavior and how to deal with it. It's a difficult thing in that setting. There is a therapy called CBIT. It's the name of it, or the acronym is I'm spacing it right now, but really what it's doing is it's teaching individuals with Tourette's to notice the premonition or the urge that's coming in order to do an opposite reaction. So say if one was like slapping something or slapping your head, right? they teach you to notice that urge and then do an opposite reaction. So maybe
I was going to ask you about that because
Yeah.
oops, thinking about what's the worst thing that I could say right now and then fighting the urge not to say it, like developing a technique to say, what's the best thing that I could say right now?
Mhm.
And or some sort of a deterrent.
Mhm.
Is that kind of,
It's really, really strange,
Yeah.
Ty. It's like whatever that is. It's the urge to do the thing that you shouldn't be doing.
Mhm.
There comes a lot of impulsivity with that too. So my son wants to often it's very difficult for him not to touch like hot pans.
Mhm.
He's been I've really taught him to embrace it and to notice it in himself. So sometimes when he notices he might have an urge to do something, he'll be like he had a little almost like balloon thing, and there were some scissors sitting nearby, and he said, "Mom, I need you to take the scissors for me."
Mhm.
So he's learning how to advocate for things to be moved so that he doesn't take it, and because there's a lot of impulsivity in it as
Sure.
well.
And that just made me think of something. So
Mhm.
that has to have impacted like the relationship between your husband and your son because like they're kind of doing that. They've kind of got this whole thing going on together.
Yeah.
Did they work together and talk to each other, and how does that go?
So the one thing that I don't think a lot of people know about Tourette syndrome is if you're around another person with Tourette's,
Mhm.
you set each other off like crazy.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So they used to, I think they still do have some camps for kids, but we've tried to watch some shows on Tourette's. My son and my husband can't watch them because their tics just explode.
Really? So camp where you round a whole bunch of them up together probably wouldn't go too well.
No, and that creates even more of that, separation and not being able to be around people who also have that condition to feel some sort of solidarity together because it just blows up.
So I guess that furthers my question then. And how do they get along?
You know, uh, I think the hardest thing is that back when my husband was younger, they didn't know much about Tourette's. So a lot of the methods that were used to try to stop him uh, became pretty traumatic for him. So I think a lot of times when he sees my son really struggling, this is just from his words, but kind of has some like flashbacks of the way that things were handled for him. So he's been growing a lot too, just trying to understand it. The therapist in me and the social worker has been like, let's talk about this together. Let's tell people about it. Let's educate people.
Mhm.
And so I think that's helped my husband become more comfortable talking about those things that are very embarrassing for him. But it is really awesome to see my son struggle and my husband be able to say, yeah, I totally get it. And then sometimes when their tics feed off of each other, they'll laugh at it and
Mhm.
giggle, and you have to have some humor in it.
Sure. So they do kind of help each other. That's a form, I would call
Yeah.
that a form of support.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because I mean, your husband's letting your son know that he's not alone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to switch topics real quick.
Okay.
And I know this is a difficult one.
Okay.
You mentioned your dad several times.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that he was your biggest fan.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your dad.
Look. So my dad grew up on I think it was third generation farm in Kalispell, Montana. He was a hardworking farmer, and don't complain. The quintessential grew up a farm boy. He ended up eventually going to WSU, and he actually helped create some of the programs at WSU. He won the Alumni Achievement Award at WSU for helping with creating some of the agricultural programs. So he went into finance and ended up being vice president of a bank here in Spokane that was primarily focused around agriculture. And then due to a merger of those banks, he ended up taking early retirement. And my grandfather was still farming that farm in Kalispell. And so my dad would go over for, like 2 months at a time to help with the harvest and all of that stuff. He loved it. It was, his childhood, and he was a farmer at heart.
So he was kind of a manly man, farmer guy.
Yeah.
And fairly intellectual too.
Very intellectual. He was very intellectual. Very generous. Very generous. Everyone who knew him. Yeah.
So, and then he was diagnosed with Parkinson's.
He was, yes.
And what was your relationship with him like before that? I mean, I'm kind of getting an idea.
Yeah.
He
helped me. He helped me out a lot. I did a lot of hard jobs trying to get to where I was as a social worker. He was my biggest cheerleader. There were some positions I had that were overnight, and I'd call him because he, woke up at ridiculous hours of the morning, and we talk, and I'd kind of bring my biggest struggles to him, and his statement to me was like, "You got this, Dynamo." He called me Dynamo. We called him Turbo because he never really stopped. He just was like a go, go, go. So he encouraged me a lot to keep going in this field. He helped me financially to do some specialized trainings that not a lot of people are lucky enough to do. He was the person I called that I think of all the people on this earth, I felt like saw me and quirks and anxiety and all, and still encouraged me and never felt judged by him.
That's huge.
Yeah. So phone call to my dad, I could take on the world.
So when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, how did that shift your role from daughter to something more?
Well, I think when I mentioned before, right, about being young, I've always kind of had this phobia of losing my parents. It's always been on my mind, especially my dad. It was something that I was like, don't think about that. He ended up like 10 years prior to that, ending up just farming, and ended up just happening to go to the doctor and found out that his arteries in his heart were like 90% clogged. And so he had to have a quadruple bypass, but might not have said anything, kind of that farmer mentality. So there was that mortality feeling with that. That was really scary and difficult for me. When he got that diagnosis, it was just bringing up a lot of those kind of fears of end of life. My role, to be honest, it was very hard to watch him struggle. He was a very brave man. I think now I even see how much more brave than I even thought he was or knew he was. It was really, really hard to watch him kind of fall apart.
How old was he when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's?
So it was only a year after my youngest son was born. So I think he was
generally.
He was early 70s.
Okay.
Early mid 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And up until that point, I mean, he was still Turbo, right?
Yes, Turbo. Okay. Yeah, his big thing was he'd come over and he was mad if I didn't have paper towels ready. The thing I love is I'm going to go to the store and buy you some paper towels. That was his big thing. But finding things to do at our house. My husband and I bought a home that needed some work. My dad did the lawn, he was a big landscaper when he wasn't farming. He loved to landscape. And so he would just find projects, and he kind of never stopped trying to find things to do. And that was just kind of who he was.
So then how quickly did it progress once he had that diagnosis?
So what we first noticed is we were actually in Montana. It was my son's first birthday, and we had a little party there, and he was really scared. And you never saw my dad scared. So there was these fears, and we were all kind of trying to understand what was going on. He couldn't really communicate it that well. And it turned from that where he obviously couldn't drive anymore. Then things were just making him really anxious. He had a dog that he loved that ended up passing away. And we tried to get him another dog, but the dog would bark and scare him so terribly. Towards the later parts of that stage of Parkinson's, there was a lot of there's hallucinations, things like that.
So again, it seems like this is something, because these are some symptoms that this is new to me. Because like when I think about Parkinson's, I think of like the muscle twitching and that sort of thing. So tell me more about that, because I wasn't aware of some of the mental manifestations.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is I'm not medical in that way, but an interesting fact is that to me is that his brother, who grew up on that same farm, actually died of Lewy body dementia. So it is the diagnosis that Robin Williams ended up having when he was originally diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's ways in that the order happens that you can distinguish between Lewy body and Parkinson's, but the only way to get a for sure diagnosis is in an autopsy.
No kidding.
So they can diagnose it based on symptoms, but you don't know for sure until, you have an autopsy. And so
they both grew up on a farm?
Yeah.
Are we tying this to pesticides or something like that? Or
that's what we've looked into that. We've seen that. I inquired with my dad a few times, like, are some of these things that you guys have used on the fields? I mean, they had the, the crop airplanes, but, he was like, no. But I don't know. I mean, there was some talk about potentially the pipes, I think, in the, because they lived in the farmland, that maybe there was something going on in the plumbing, but yeah.
The reason I ask is because my dad grew up on a farm,
and
he died of Lewy body.
He did?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, some of the things that you're telling me, and I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
So please continue.
Yeah.
Because we'll talk. Maybe we'll compare notes later, but please continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, he didn't talk a lot about what he was experiencing. And the other thing that really sucked about this is that this was coming to fruition around COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so he couldn't go out. We really tried to not see him because we didn't want him to get sick and then be in the hospital by himself, and, how the chaos that was with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent a lot of time not being able to see him and kind of watch from a distance, which was really difficult. It was really very difficult on my mom being a caregiver for that.
So what did you see? Like, you told me that he was very fearful and having hallucinations and stuff like that. What did you see?
So it actually almost kind of had a wave where he got really bad, and then he seemed to get a little better, and then he got worse again towards the end. But it was just a lot of like the movement disorders, a lot of confusion. There was a point where kind of towards the end of his life, he would call people and just talk and talk and talk and talk. And you couldn't get him to stop. There was just these weird behaviors. I actually sat down and talked to him one day, and he told me, when I'm home alone, I hear banging in the walls, just different kinds of things that he wasn't talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That I kind of asked questions about. But it was a lot of just kind of the cognitive, wasn't sleeping well, had a lot of like digestive type stuff going on, a lot of sleep issues. Yeah.
So all told, so you said 2019 is when he was diagnosed?
Well, it's the symptoms started in 2015. I think it was probably around 2016 or maybe a little later that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Okay. Yeah.
So the struggle continues.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of where to go with that, but
sound like he was just getting progressively worse.
Yeah.
And I guess that's.
Yeah.
Did they put him on medications?
They had some medications for him. One of the problems is that he was. My dad was a fixer and a thinker and just like, and especially, towards the end, he was just like going off on these tangents of like how things fit together and it was just kind of getting, really strange. And he was focusing a lot on like trials for Parkinson's. I kind of started to see him like doing a lot of emailing and messaging that was kind of bordering on, we didn't know if these were scams or not. But he kind of had this hope feeling like, I think that was part of the last part of it, that he could find some kind of trial that would, help him or help. One of the things that he wanted was to help others, so this didn't happen to him.
So was he under the care of a physician?
He was,
Did
yeah.
that physician prescribe medication?
Yes.
Did he take it?
He did take it. However, he would sometimes try to adjust the dose to what he thought it was supposed to be.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And then right before he passed, he was put on a mental health medication. Yeah.
What was it? Do you recall?
I believe it was bupropion or buspirone, I believe.
We really need a comparison.
Okay.
What year was this?
That was, I believe, early 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
So one of the times I'd come over, so here was another issue, is that he would try to get on his computer and he would try to fix things. He was thinking he was fixing things, but he was messing it all up. So I would have to come over and I'd have to redo it. Oftentimes he'd try to change passwords. So I would go over there and just deal with these messes.
Yeah.
And one day I was sitting in his room with him, and he had been talking to me about some hallucinations. One of them, he thought that the women on the news could see and hear him. Another one was, we were sitting there and he's like, "Is my chair moving? I feel like it's moving." And no, Dad, it's not moving. And so one day I'm not sure, I still don't know how I feel about this today, but I looked at him and I said, "Dad, I don't know if this is going to get better." I said, I don't want you to, be chasing something that's not going to end up panning out. And so we ended up kind of getting into, the talk of, him passing. And I asked him, I said, "Are you scared?" And I remember, my dad, who didn't show much emotion, was on the end of the bed, and, a single tear coming down his eyes. And he said, "A little bit." And then I was able to kind of tell him, just kind of in this emotional state again, me being very emotional, talking to him about, how much I appreciated him being a dad, and that even though there was a lot of this that happened, that, he was an amazing human and, changed my life, was my favorite person. And what I didn't know was my goodbye. I did find out that after that day that I talked to him, my mom had said he had called some of his friends and had told them that our conversation had felt to him like opening a bottle of champagne and the bubbly. So he had felt lifted and lighter after what happened next. I still struggle with that. But it was actually 5 years ago yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Mention that.
And I was having a session with one of my clients, and my husband came into my bedroom and told me that my dad had passed away, and then had told me that he had taken his own life. And anybody who knew my father, my dad was the last person on this planet who you would have ever suspected would have done that, which made it all of the more shocking. Sure. So I lost it. I was, like just absolutely devastated, and had to go pick up my children from childcare. My mom, who found him, needed my husband, so my husband left. So I was kind of left alone to figure out how to get over there. I ended up going over there. I did see him with, he was covered and everything, but I remember it as clear as day. The wind, the sun. My husband, when he first got there, remembers that he just noticed that my dad wasn't shaking anymore, and almost felt like that sadness but relief. Unfortunately, my husband did not believe it, and so my husband saw more than he should have as well. But it rocked my world. I just didn't understand. Sometimes I still don't. Oh, well, actually, now knowing my dad, I do understand. My dad, I don't want to sound crass or anything, but like my dad's mentality as a farmer is he was very adamant that he did not want animals to suffer. Like he was, I grew up, watching, sometimes they had to put, cows down. My dad was very, very adamant about that, animals should not suffer. And I don't know if it's a good way to look at it or not, but I think that, he had made that choice, that he had suffered long enough. And I think somebody at, his memorial, told me that, I don't promote any of this, but, that my dad, that my dad was a brave man and made his own choice. I think for a person who had really taken care of many people throughout his life, almost to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I look back on it, there's some freedom in knowing that he got to make his own choice.
I can't disagree with it.
Yeah.
And going back to that conversation that you had with him, and you said you don't know how you feel about that to this day.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
It's something that's like burned in my mind that I will never forget, of being able to tell him the things that I wanted to. But of course, there's times, I think, when anybody loses someone to suicide, it's kind of like, what could I have done? What couldn't I have done? Again, I'm a therapist. I feel like I should have noticed the signs, because there were signs looking back. But when I heard particularly the thing about he had suddenly felt kind of free after our conversation, and I know that that is also something that happens when people kind of realize that they may not continue living, and that freedom, because oftentimes when you're looking for individuals or assessing people for who are suicidal, they will come across as very happy, content. Their moods will lift, kind of because they've made that choice. So there's parts about that I logically know that it was his choice, but also, there's that part of like, did I hasten,
I'm sure you've had plenty of time to process this, but I would have to, if you don't mind if I weigh on this,
No, yeah.
I have to say no.
Yeah.
Because like, number one, how would you have felt had he passed away, even if it was much later, and you never got to share those things with him?
Yeah.
And number two, he was a man who was going to do what he was going to do, and
Yeah.
I'm not, so maybe you gave him what he needed to have some peace.
Yeah.
Because I know you were close.
Yeah.
And I truly hope that you do not blame yourself. Because I can see it.
Yeah.
I can understand why you'd feel that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just natural for
Sure.
people to blame themselves, but
Yeah.
over the years, I think the beauty of this, and I do talk about this, is through my dad's passing, I was given a lot of gifts. I am a much better therapist in having experienced traumatic death. He's with me all the time. I feel like he's, in there with me, cheering me on. I ended up, I think back how proud I am of myself. I don't say that often, that I was, had some struggles trying to get my hours to take my licensing exam, which is pretty hard for social workers.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that not many months after he passed. Interestingly enough, his birthday is 9/11, and my testing spot was 9/11. Like,
Yeah.
there's all those little, those quirky things that show up. So,
But this is after a little bit of hindsight too.
Yeah.
Because you said initially, you felt that you couldn't be a therapist anymore because you missed the signs.
yeah. Right after initially, I can't even explain, like, just how shattered I was with that. I mean, as a therapist, we always kind of have that fear of our clients, I mean, just on your watch, that you didn't help. Like, it's something that you fear and have concern of as a therapist a lot. And so when it happens to your own family member, especially, again, someone you would have never expected, I was really hard on myself. And I worked for a place that was amazing. They said, take as long as you need. They rerouted my clients to other people, and then found out they actually paid me, even though I didn't do any work. So I had some amazing
That's some good
support.
support. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then what ended up happening is when I went back, I actually found it helped me.
Well, that was funny enough. That was the next question because you said
Yeah.
you returned to work and felt an unexpected sense of rejuvenation.
Yeah.
What do you think that was? I mean, I have to think that the support that you got from your coworkers had to have been a nice big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I am maybe a little bit like you, Ty. I am fascinated with people's stories. I love to hear where they're coming from. I love to meet them where they are and understand why they've been where they are. And so kind of jumping right back into that, it gave me the ability to kind of compartmentalize and step out of Jen, who lost her father, into, therapist that's been doing this for a long time. And I didn't realize that it would actually be really healing to me to be able to set that aside as like, I don't have to be the Jen who's grieving her dad.
Mm-hmm.
I can be this and really almost focus more on people in some ways. Yeah. Yeah. So
You spend your days helping people process trauma,
Mhm.
but when it's your own, what actually works for you?
I'm still exploring that. I think as a therapist and a human in general, like I kind of always advocate for on and off going to therapy or having a therapist that can help you with your specific need, just doing your own work and whatever that looks like.
Mhm.
I've struggled here and there with trauma. I've had a lot of loss since traumatic loss. And so what ends up happening and what's fascinating about grief and that I noticed when my dad died is that past trauma almost tends to come up with grief. It's very strange. It's like you're grieving your dad, but then you have these memories of past trauma as well. And I think that confuses people. Another insight that I gained with this in helping people. But then when other traumas happen, you're grieving that trauma, but then the old grief and trauma comes up. So it's almost like you're having to reconcile all these different memories that are coming into your mind. And so I've had to do a lot of work with therapy, with really taking care of my body. I'm still struggling with that, but I've made a designated day that I take off and I get to lay in bed and not feel guilty about anything. And I still have a lot of struggles with that. I think right now with, sometimes I compare like just kind of the political climate and people's fears and all kinds of things right now is I mean, it's not the same, but similarly to like how nurses were the ones who were kind of frontline workers for COVID.
Yeah.
Us as therapists are just dealing with so much fear and so much, no matter what side you're on, right? Or whatever, it's just a time of uncertainty. And then us having to deal with that ourselves of like us not knowing. It's been rough. I mean, a lot of therapists are experiencing some pretty intense burnout. So that adds into everything too of trying to work through trauma and trying to heal. Yeah.
Healthcare workers are notoriously bad
Yes.
at taking care of themselves, and they are notoriously bad patients.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you really bad at when it comes to taking care of yourself?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, just the first thing that comes to mind is I need to really work on just being proud of myself, giving myself credit. I think I am notoriously hard on myself, and working with that. I think just giving myself grace. I struggle to take compliments. I don't ask for help a lot. I'm kind of going through a little period of isolation where, I go to work and deal with these intense, stories and then come home and I have these intense struggles with my children. And so when I have any extra time, I kind of just zone out. Uh, I don't kind of get out there and ground myself, which I found is very helpful and, kind of trying to get back to yourself after trauma. So I would just say like, being kind to myself, being more compassionate, like I encourage other people to do, and then doing it.
Who takes care of you?
Oh, gosh. That is a hard question. My initial sense is, I was actually thinking about this yesterday, is no one right now. I have really a lot of my needs is just, I'm the type of person where I just want presence. Like just someone to be with me and just to not try to cheer me up, just be with me. Again, my dad played a huge role in that. I have another friend from the past that was also one of those individuals who ended up, I found out a few months back, ended up also taking their life. So I feel like I've only really been seen by a couple of individuals in my life, and now those people are gone. My husband is a great man. He's very, very energetic and very positive, but I tend to be more of the like needing to just kind of sit in the emotion and have people just be with me in that. My boys are amazing. They're kind heart, sweethearts that will just sit with me sometimes when they know that I'm struggling. So, and I do have a good family that will be there, but right now it feels pretty lonely. I'm kind of going through that period of that. So,
and how are you doing with the giving yourself grace? Because you began talking about, you mentioned this like multiple times, this feeling of shame.
Yeah.
How are you doing with that now?
I think a lot better. I think one of the craziest things that happens is when you're in the spot of being a helper to other people. It's kind of that classic, you can give plenty of advice to other people and see their problems, but it's really difficult to do that for yourself. And I think through the amazing and courageous and brave individuals that I've worked with, just kind of the natural path of helping them heal has paralleled some of my stuff in some way. So, not integrating my stuff with that, right? That's not appropriate, really. But seeing how they've changed, watching my clients be brave, watching them have compassion on
That's not
themselves.
taking anything. That's not integrate. I mean,
Yeah.
that's being proud of their.
Yeah.
That's being proud for them.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's amazing. And so it's kind of just been a natural healing, and there's nothing quite like seeing people have this determination that are just like, oh yeah, I just kind of fixed myself. I'm like, no, you don't realize like you did some really, really hard work. And that's the favorite part of my job.
I got I think this was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a friend of mine. I was going through a really hard time. I mean, it's the hardest thing I ever been through. I was just grieving hard, like every day. And he said, make sure that you do something nice for yourself every day. It doesn't have to be anything big, but like if you go to the coffee stand and you get a coffee, just acknowledge that. Be like, I'm getting this coffee and I'm getting it for myself.
For me.
Or whatever. And I've passed that on to a lot of people. So like, I hope you do that because I think you've earned it.
Yeah. Thank you.
What are the nice things how do you do that?
Well, I am a fool for iced matchas. So I'll go, sometimes get myself one of those. One thing that I really do is I am a notorious night owl. So after everybody's gone to bed, I will kind of give myself some time to do some puzzles and things like that. But I also, there's this kind of societal thing of like waking up early and getting ready in the mornings. And, one of my things is resting and trying not to feel guilty about that. So on days that I don't work, I give myself permission to do that. It just kind of depends, and can be crazy. Life can be crazy up and down with boys. But I think I'm still exploring that of like what feels good to me and how I can incorporate that more for myself.
So I know we kind of danced around this a little bit and we threw out a couple pieces here, but if you had to define your personal philosophy of wellness now, not as a therapist, but as someone who's lived through all this stuff, what is it? It sounds like it's a work in progress, but what have you got so far?
I think I think being able to come to terms with life can really throw you some curveballs, and it can be really, really hard. And there can also be some amazing things that go on, and holding those together.
Mm-hmm.
I find that humans tend to want to have one or the other, like kind of a black and white mentality of either things are really great or they're really bad. And I have people coming into my office all the time to say, like, help me figure out which one it is, right? And I think the biggest thing for me and the beauty of all of it is learning how to find the beauty in the suffering and the lessons that come from that,
Mm-hmm.
and being okay with things not being okay.
Yeah. That period of grief that I shared with you,
Yeah.
it was the worst time of my entire life.
Yeah.
But I look back on it now, and I'm not going to say that I'm glad it happened, but it's like it was an intense period of growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it sucked, but I am grateful for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can say the same, really. It's, I often say, the experience with my dad, he gave me a gift
Mm-hmm.
in it, and it just took a while to see it.
Well, and I mean, you're not just a therapist that's read a bunch of books.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
So, seeing as how you are very good at dispensing advice and not always so good at taking it, if someone listening right now is the strong one, the one everyone leans on, but they're barely holding it together, what would you say to them?
That's a good question. I think that my initial reaction is to be like, reach out, be brave, and put some of those walls down. I think vulnerability is a big thing. But what I found is that I feel like when people are already kind of struggling in that state, it's hard to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost feel like kind of the philosophy of those of us who are doing well, checking on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to other people and making sure that they're checking in on one another, loving one another, being kind in a grocery store, right? And I think for those that are struggling or having a hard time, I would say, there's some lesson in it. And inevitably, life is kind of the ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I remind my clients that, things may be going really great right now, but it's a natural progression of life for things to get harder. And so I would say just I often, kind of compare it to hunkering down when there's a hurricane, right? Like everybody has to just hunker and wait for it to get over, to like pass by, but
Mm-hmm.
reminding people that it will pass by, reach out, look into therapy, even just building a connection with a therapist or a connection with anybody in community can just make you feel not alone. And I think that's the most important thing, is not feeling like anybody's there to necessarily change you, but to be witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big important thing.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm out of questions for you.
Okay.
Do you have any?
I don't think so. I enjoyed this. I appreciate you having me on and talking about a lot of this great stuff.
Yeah, that was really good talk. You did a great job, and I really appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you willing to share.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, that'll about do it for this episode of The People We Meet. But before we go, I just want to say thanks. Seriously, this show only exists because you keep showing up, listening, sharing, and being a part of it. And I don't take that lightly. And to my family for humoring my foolish endeavors. And if something in this episode stuck with you, pass it along. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've got a story, your story or someone else's, that deserves a voice, I want to hear from you. Head over to the People We Meet podcast and reach out. You can also find the show on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Podbean. Give it a follow. Stay connected and help this thing grow. Thanks again for listening. And as always, be good to each other.